Bears fans, very quickly before we hop into today's video, the vast majority of people who watch the videos on the channel are not subscribed. So if you are a Bears fan and if you enjoy the Chicago Bears content that we make on the channel, I would really appreciate it if you guys would consider subscribing. With your help, we can build this channel up and it can become a big community of fellow Bears fans. Thanks guys, and enjoy the video. Alright, welcome in to the very first Chicago Bears Weekly Roundup of the 2021 NFL offseason. I'm going to do this once a week for the rest of the offseason. It's going to be a podcast style long form Chicago Bears update every single week. Pretty much just summarizing all of the happenings in the world of the Chicago Bears. So every single Friday, there's going to be a Bears Weekly Roundup for the rest of the NFL offseason. I think it's the best way to do it. It's just easier. There's a lot of small things that happen during the offseason every day or every 2 days. And I think rather than doing small individual videos on each topic, just talk about it, every week in a podcast style segment. And, we'll see how that goes. So for the next 20 or so weeks, we're going to do Chicago Bears Weekly Roundups on YouTube every single Friday. So a lot of things actually happened in the land of the Chicago Bears. Allen Robinson got franchise tagged. That's probably the biggest news of the week. That's the biggest, I suppose, solid news so far of the offseason. So we'll talk about that. Cairo Santos got an extension. So we'll talk about that too. Bobby Massey is pending release, finally, from the Bears. So that's a topic. And then also, I'd be remiss not to talk more about Russell Wilson. Literally, my whole entire Twitter timeline continues to talk about Russell Wilson rumors. And, there's just constant Russell Wilson teases. So we'll just have some fun at the end and talk about, spitball about Russell Wilson to the Chicago Bears. Because why not? It's the offseason. Why not talk about Russell Wilson going to the Chicago Bears? So firstly, on the docket, Allen Robinson got franchise tagged on Wednesday, okay? It wasn't surprising. We kind of knew this was going to happen. But, it's good that it finally happened and it's set in stone. So Allen Robinson for the 2021 season is going to earn about $18 million on the franchise tag, which I actually don't think that's the franchise tag price. I think that's 120% of his contract, his salary last year, which you either get 120% of your salary last year or you get the franchise tag number. I believe it's whichever one of those is higher. So I believe Allen Robinson's getting 120% of his salary last year, which would be $18 million. Look, as I said, we kind of knew this was going to happen. Is Allen Robinson happy about this? Probably not. I know a lot of players aren't exactly delighted with the franchise tag, but look, talk's dried up and we knew the Bears weren't in a position to give him a long-term contract right now because they don't seem to be on the same level with Allen Robinson in terms of long-term value, right? And don't get me wrong, Allen Robinson should get a long-term contract. I think he's a clear number one wide receiver. And look, the market sets the game. He deserves to get the money that the top wide receivers in the league make, and he deserves long-term contracts. So I understand why Allen Robinson's pissed off. But at the same time, as Ryan Pace said in his press conference recently, the league does give, teams the franchise tag as an option to use. So, teams have the right to use that where they choose. And we knew the Bears were going to do this. And look, I'm just happy that Allen Robinson's under contract for at least another year. Now, does this mean Allen Robinson will be a Chicago Bear come the start of the season? Not necessarily. Obviously, a tag and trade is still a possibility, but I would be very surprised if Allen Robinson is tag and traded. I think if you're bringing in a quarterback, you want to keep your number one wide receiver to keep the quarterback happy, right? Like, if you bring in a quarterback, the last thing you want to do is trade away Allen Robinson because it takes away the opportunity of seeing a great quarterback with a great wide receiver, which in today's NFL, that's the duo you want, right? You want an amazing quarterback and an amazing wide receiver. So I laid it out in my video on Tuesday. I think if a big piece has to get traded for a quarterback, it's going to be Khalil Mack. It's not going to be Allen Robinson because it doesn't make sense cap-wise and contract-wise to trade Allen Robinson, but it does unfortunately make sense to trade Khalil Mack if we have to bring in a guy like a Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson. So look, Allen Robinson, He's getting paid 18 million this year, which is pretty nice, but I know he wants that long-term contract. I'm confident that a long-term contract will be done. Allen Robinson will be just fine. I think he's amazing. He's a number one wide receiver. He will get paid, not to worry about it. But for this year, he's on the franchise tag, and that's the tag that the Bears decided to use. So it's a good thing that Allen Robinson is still under contract with the Bears. Also, by the way, quick tidbit, Ravens fans genuinely believed they were getting Allen Robinson. It's like, why would we... If the Bears were going to let Allen Robinson go, it would be a tag and trade, Ravens fans. Like, we would use him in a tag and trade. We're not just going to let Allen Robinson go for nothing. That was just so stupid. But anyway, Allen Robinson is a Bear for another year, so it's good news. It's great news for us, as people who are watching Allen Robinson play football, and he will get a long-term contract eventually, and he will get paid. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Speaking of contract extensions, Cairo Santos got extended last night by the Chicago Bears. So Cairo Santos has agreed to terms with the Bears on a new 5-year contract worth up to $17.5 million. However, the final 2 years of the deal are voidable, so it's essentially a 3-year, $9 million deal worth up to $11 million. But look, either way, the extension marks the long-anticipated end to a kicker carousel in Chicago. We don't have to worry about kickers anymore. I know this was down the list of priorities for this offseason. We're all talking about the quarterback, the offensive line, the receiving core, blah, blah, blah. But look, we know more than any other fan base that kickers really do matter. And, Cairo Santos was a beast last year. He came in and he hit 30 of 32 field goals as well as 36 out of 37 extra points. The man was just automatic. And I never felt bad about him kicking a field goal, whereas in years past, I mean, it could literally be, it could be an extra point and I'm sweating watching the TV, So I'm glad Cairo Santos was extended. And it's a pretty big payday for a kicker, but look, he deserves it. He's absolutely automatic. And hopefully now any worries about kickers will just be gone forever for the Bears. So I'm glad that I am glad that they decided to pay Cairo Santos. I think he deserves it. He's a really good kicker. He was really, really good last year. So I'm excited that we don't have to worry about that anymore, at least. Next thing, Bobby Massey is being let go by the Chicago Bears. So Bobby Massey is one of many cap casualties around the NFL this year. The Bears already did it with Buster Screen. He was a cap casualty. Bobby Massey is just the latest cap casualty. And there's going to be more cap casualties on the Bears. Could be Jimmy Graham. Could be Anthony Miller. It could be Akeem Hicks. It could be... There's a lot of different people that it could be. But Bobby Massey was the latest cap casualty. And this made complete sense to cut Bobby Massey. Bobby Massey was terrible. Okay, he was really bad as a tackle, and he was also injured as well, and Bobby Massey was getting paid more money than people thought. Letting Massey go creates $5.4 million in cap space. He was due to earn $8 million this season. Man, Bobby Massey was getting more money than I thought. I didn't realize he was getting paid that much, excuse me. So I'm really glad that the Bears decided to let him go, because he was not playing up to that level. It was funny because I was listening to other Bears commentators talk about it, and they were like, yeah, Bobby, he didn't always play up to his contract. And I was like, can we call a spade, lads? The guy is absolute trash. He was so bad as a tackle. Oh my God, he was really bad. And on top of that, he was injured as well. So Bobby Massey didn't deserve the money that we were going to pay him. We could not justify keeping Bobby Massey on the roster for another year, especially in the cap situation that we're in right now. So look, again, another thing that just made complete sense for the Bears to do, cutting Bobby Massey. However, what this does is it further highlights the need for the Bears to get a right tackle. Even with Bobby Massey, the Bears needed a right tackle because, as I said, Bobby Massey did not play well. But there was a reason why Bobby Massey started when he was healthy, because the backups were even worse. So we're in dire need of tackles. We're in need of a left tackle too, because Charles Leno Jr., similar to Bobby Massey, is not playing up to standard. But unfortunately, I think Charles Leno Jr. will probably be back next year. We can't just wave our magic wand and fix every single issue on the roster. But it is, within the realm of possibility to get at least a decent right tackle. Some people are talking about putting Alex Bars out there or a Fedi out there or someone. And I'm like, okay, first of all, do you really, really trust a Fedi to be a starting right tackle for the entire season? No. And also, if you take Bars and put him out there, then you're just weakening the interior offensive line. And the interior offensive line isn't even great anyway. That's not a viable solution. We can't just go into next year with an even weaker offensive line than we came into this year with. All right? Because even with a great quarterback, that's still going to show its ugly head at some point in the season. We need to actually go out there and get a decent right tackle. Whether we do that through the second round of the draft, because our first round draft pick's probably going to be gone, or whether we do that through free agency, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what the Bears do. Obviously, similar to what I said about Cairo Santos and the kicker situation, obviously it's down the list of priorities. The quarterback is the number one priority, but the offensive line is right behind that. And once this quarterback is sorted, we seriously need to look at this offensive line, because it's in dire straits. But it made sense to cut Bobby Massey. He did not deserve the money that he was going to get. And, again, especially in the cap situation we're in with the lowered cap, trying to create cap space for a quarterback made complete sense. It's just going to be interesting to see where the Bears go now to try and get at least... I don't need, I don't need some amazing right tackle, okay? But I want at least a viable option at right tackle going into next year. So we'll see where the Bears go with the offensive line in the offseason. Okay, finally, the topic that we all just keep talking about. I mean, this is literally all Bears Twitter and, Bears bloggers and Bears YouTubers. This is all anybody talks about online when it comes to the Chicago Bears right now. The one, the only, the God, Russell Wilson. So, look, the teases are getting a bit much now. It's like every single day there's a little tidbit coming out about the Russell Wilson deal is done. We all know apparently the Seahawks are taking calls. The Bears apparently have a really good offer on the table. They're really pushing to do it. I went through trade packages in my last video, so check that out if you want to see it. But, there is realistic trade packages that the Bears could give up to get Russell Wilson. And there continues to just be little nuggets thrown out there online about, yeah, man, this is going to happen. Now, is this just regular off-season talk? Is this just people trying to make content, so someone like me can talk about it? Maybe. But it's still fun to talk about. So apparently the other day, I saw this explode on my Twitter. Apparently Vegas took down the odds for the Russell Wilson trade, and you weren't able to bet who Russell Wilson was going to go to anymore, and subsequently boosted the Bears' odds to win the Super Bowl. The Bears' Super Bowl odds went way up, and you couldn't bet on who Russell Wilson was going to anymore. So that got all of Bears Twitter going ballistic, saying, oh my God, it's happening. Now, I don't know what sportsbook would actually do that. I didn't see proof of that. I just saw it all over Twitter. So I don't know if that's actually true or not, but that it was funny to see everybody go ballistic. And I'm not going to lie, when I saw it, I went, oh my God, this is actually happening. Apparently Russell Wilson and Ciara were seen in a recording studio in Chicago. We all know that, Ciara is clearly a big part of Russell Wilson's decision making, as she should be. She's his wife. I mean, come on. She's an artist, she's a musical artist. She was seen leaving a studio in Chicago. Look, it's like it's like a tabloid or something. It's like we're reporting on news or whatever. I know this is so childish to talk about this kind of stuff, but it's like, us Bear fans are just getting strung along with this Russell Wilson thing, man. But all the genuine reports that we see and like everything that we're hearing, it does seem to be getting pretty close. We still have no inclination that it's definitely going to happen, but it seems to be getting more realistic by the day, this Russell Wilson thing. And man, it's exciting me. I mean, I have a lot of NFL reporters. I have their tweets on my phone. I have Ian Rappaport. I have, Adam Schefter, guys like that. And actually, when you have their tweets on, you realize how much work they do because they tweet every 2 minutes. But I'm checking my phone constantly, man, to just see Bears, Russell Wilson. Pat McAfee keeps talking about it. Everyone's talking about it. So it's funny to spitball about it and keep thinking about it. But, as I said, it does seem to be becoming more realistic. It's not a pipe dream anymore. I said this about a week ago, I think, or 2 weeks ago. It might have been my first video on the channel, actually, where I talked about Russell Wilson. And I said, look, it's not a pipe dream anymore. Like, when this was first talked about, like, what was it, a month ago, when Russell Wilson first made a few comments about how he's sick of getting hit and he's sick of basically not having an offensive line at all, which the Seahawks haven't had for ages. And everyone kind of went, yeah, there's no way Russell Wilson's getting traded. And look where we are now. The narrative's really changed, and people, it seems to be getting more and more and more realistic is all I'm saying. And I can tell you, as a Bears fan who is sitting around just looking for off-season content, that's really good for me, and it's really fun to think about. So I'm sure we'll still be strung along for another, I don't know, hopefully not too long. Hopefully we actually know what's happening with the Bears quarterback situation fairly soon. But man, if Russell Wilson came to the Bears, oh my God, would I be excited. That'd be amazing. But hey, that's not a hot take. Everybody feels the same. But that's pretty much it for the Bears news this week. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments if you like this idea of me just doing a weekly podcast style episode on YouTube. And we'll see you next week. As always, bear down.